Welcome to the Silverhawk Magical Mystery Tour. This is Discourse 2, the title being John the Divine, an Historical Tour. I'd like to preface this tour with a little word about accessing the Akashic time track, so ones have a better understanding. The Akashic time track is the memory of God, the memory of the universe. It is the library of experience. We all have one in our souls, and all the lives we've lived and all the lives that have ever been lived are all in the great mind. And in meditation stillness, we can actually access the time track and review our Akashic history. This is what I did to retrieve the life of John the Divine. I did a kinesiological test for truth that I was in fact this being, after it was impressed on me over a period of time that I in fact was. It was not an easy thing to embrace. However, I did, and I got to review that very life and what actually happened in it, knowing that everyone into the revelation is certainly curious as to who John the Divine was, virtually nothing being known about the man. So we're going to fill that in. One of the reasons I returned was not only to bring the second half of the prophecy, but to illustrate and educate people with the fact that dire prophecy is not cast in stone and can be spiritually redirected and transmuted, which has been done with the Revelation Book 1. We are no longer on the great destructive time track that was portrayed in that prophecy. So, that is a background. Let us proceed into the life of John the Divine. John was born of humble parents. He was a humble man. They were followers of the Master Jesus and his teachings. John was raised in these teachings. When he went out into the world, he was a great evangelist, if you will. He was teaching everyone and bringing them into the love and power of spiritual knowledge as portrayed by the Master. And wherever he went, he would share these teachings. As time went on, he grew older, wiser, more proficient with divine communion, if you will, and more sensitive to the higher realms. And he gathered a following. This following became bigger as he went along. He grew a long gray beard, long hair, had a robe, would walk the earth, and sharing the teachings and the instructions from the Master as to how to liberate your spiritual being. And the Gnostics were holding these teachings in purity, that they had not, the teachings had not entered a world religion status and had been crafted into a doctrine and dogma. They were very pure. And people were quite expansive about them. However, the Roman hierarchy was not expansive, nor was the purveyors of the pagan religions of Rome, who treated their religion as a business. And they were busily trying to suppress the Christian movement, the followers of Jesus, throwing them in with the lions and all of that, with the Colosseum. And as John got big enough and worrisome enough, they, however, had second thoughts about turning him into a martyr, knowing what happened the first time with the other great teacher, Yeshua ben Joseph, Jesus. So they developed a different strategy. They decided to kidnap him and his scribe in the middle of the night. This they did, and spirited him down to the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, put him on a ship, and transported him to the very edge of the Roman Empire, out to the Isle of Patmos. And there he was offloaded, and the Roman contingent there on the island were instructed to see that he didn't leave, ever. So yes, they took up residence, he and the scribe, in the cave that was so famous, made friends with the local residents, who treated him as a holy man, which he was. There were fishermen and goat herders on the island and what have you, people living there. And the Roman contingent keeping an eye on the borders of Rome, the empire. As time went on, John retreated into his stillness and knew that his end time was coming. He was going to be going to the soul plane, and he had a great curiosity that he asked of God. He wanted to know what the future beheld for this earth and mankind. And this future was downloaded from the ultimate source. As it was quite compelling and powerful. The scribe that was there with John, as a faithful servant, he was a younger man, dutifully wrote the prophecy down as it was downloaded on a scroll. Now this download was not one session. It happened over several months, and written down dutifully. When it was over, when it ended, portraying a new and glorified earth, and that the light and love would win, that God would win, John felt such relief because he had seen the end of it, and it ended up a happy ending, very happy ending. So it wasn't long after that he died. He went to sleep and sailed on to the heavenly realms. And the people of the island buried him in his secret place at the time. And the scribe, having no further duties, rolled up the scrolls and hid them. And then went down to the Romans by the sea and said, my master has died. I'm of no threat to anyone. May I leave the island? And they allowed him to leave. So he went back to the Holy Land. He went back to Israel and that region. Now John had instructed him what to do with this scroll when he arrived back home. He was instructed to leave it with the Essenes, an Essene order. So this he did. He went in and told the tale of this prophetic download and left it with the Essene order. There it remained until the Council of Nicaea was called in the early part of 325, I believe, something like that. They called in all the Christian elements and all the scrolls in order to craft the Bible and come up with a holy book for their new state-sponsored religion. And then declared the Gnostics to be excommunicated from this. They were not to preach this teaching anymore that they had, and teach only what was sanctioned by the Holy and Roman Church and the Emperor. Well, the Essenes had brought this revelation, and the Council of Nicaea went through all the scrolls. They edited them. Some were cast out. You can read those in the Apocrypha, the scrolls that weren't included in the Bible. And they crafted a Bible to their liking and came upon the revelation and saw that it was an end-time prophecy. And they declared, well, this is the natural last book of the Bible. So there we will put it. This shall be the end of the Bible. They put their seal and sanction on the whole thing, and you had the very birth of the official Christian church as sanctioned by Rome with the Holy Book written in Latin, and the establishment of the empire of Christianity thus began with the empire of Rome. And the Gnostics were now out of favor and bade to not teach independently of the church. So the purity of the teachings were thus lost and overlaid by the Roman Church. However, the revelation was in there, but they left out the part where it stated that all dire prophecy can be transmuted by divine grace. It does not have to be lived through. This was a grave, grave mistake and a grave error. However, it has now been corrected. And I'm satisfied that it is. And the record has been set straight. Now you know who John the Divine was, how he lived his life, and how it came to be that he wrote the Revelation, and how it came to be in the Bible. Now, we are in the time of Revelation, Book 2. I've titled the Drifter Trilogy, the Final Testament, the Genesis, and Divine Triumph. It is a true adventure story, unlike any you have ever read, and gives you the grand tour of the glorified earth and humanity. It is so beautiful. It is to be so glorious, beyond anything that's ever been, even the original Eden. The new Eden will be even more glorious, and the humanity of it more so as well. So until tomorrow, namaste. Tomorrow I will engage the higher consciousness and self-realization in Discourse 3.